Thank you, Andrea. Good morning and welcome to Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship. I'm Reverend Paul Beckel. It is good to be together. Even when we are able to gather in the same room, though, there will be many with us from afar, joining remotely from many places for many reasons. And many we can no longer physically touch, but we will remember as beloved ancestors. We welcome their spirit today, their spirit of love, even as we feel that love as a breeze passing through us to those who will come after us. It is good to be together. Next Sunday will be a special opportunity to come together for our annual Flower Communion celebration. We will be together on Zoom as usual at 10:30, but you can also go to Maritime Heritage Park downtown in Bellingham, and if you watch the service on Zoom from your phone or laptop at 10:30, or if you come at 11:30, you will be there just in time to see our flower mandala floating downstream. And this is how the mandala is going to be created. On Saturday, from 11 to 1, the sanctuary will be open so that, appropriately masked and distanced, because we will not be asking about vaccination status, people can come in and lay a flower on our mandala. And then on Saturday, we will have a service here in the sanctuary. About 45 minutes into the service, as usual, we will fold up the mandala and carry it down to Whatcom Creek. Between 11:15 and 11:30, there will still be service going on Zoom, as Ron Quinn and Jeff Copeland and Tessie Mandeville will still be continuing the service from the sanctuary. And then at 11:30, we'll switch over to the creek where we'll release the mandala. So one way or another, I hope you can join us for Flower Communion, both on Saturday and or on Sunday. It'll be a special opportunity to figure out a new way to be together. Please pass, that's a little complicated, so you can read it again in the midweek update or in today's order of service, and please pass that along to anyone else, since we haven't done it that way exactly before. You can also pass along information about BUF via buf.org, and of course encourage people to sign up at buf.org for our midweek update. And now it's time for lighting the chalice, which we do in solidarity with Unitarian Universalists throughout the world. Paciencia y fe. Paciencia y fe. Jane, Ben, and I saw the movie In the Heights last night. The song Paciencia y fe, patience and faith, captured my heart. Old Abuela Claudia sang tribute to her mother, who came from Cuba, the home she loved where there were no jobs, to Nueva New York for a job that offered little dignity and endless labor. Patience and faith passed on from generation to generation. And now, having inherited this better life, nearing the end of her own life, Abuela Claudia aches to see the next generation struggling. Those she loves who have made America their home, but still struggle to survive, fight for dignity, spend all they have to get through endless immigration hurdles. What can she pass along, she wonders, before she passes on? Paciencia y fe, patience and faith. As we light our chalice, let us join to honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person, in solidarity with all who must fight to be recognized. And let's say together our covenant. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service gives it life. Celebrating our diversity and joined by a quest for truth, we work for peace and honor all creation. This is our covenant. And please join me in singing our gathering hymn, number 153, "Oh, I Woke Up This Morning." We have about 10 people here in the sanctuary today, and while we're singing, everyone but the song leader has to be masked, but it feels so good still to be able to sing together. Next Saturday, Black Americans celebrate Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day, Jubilee Day, Liberation Day, and Emancipation Day, a holiday celebrating the emancipation of those who had been enslaved in the United States but were not notified until 2.5 years following the Emancipation Proclamation that had officially outlawed slavery in those states in insurrection against the Union. 2 weeks ago, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the city acknowledged the 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre, when mobs of white residents, many of them deputized and given weapons by city officials, attacked Black residents and destroyed homes and businesses of the Greenwood district in Tulsa. The attacks carried out on the ground and from private aircraft burned and destroyed more than 35 square blocks of the neighborhood, at the time the wealthiest Black community in the United States, known as Black Wall Street. Today, Many of us who are white Americans continue to live on the periphery of memories, the joys and the sorrows of our own history, which is the history of yet unrealized liberty and justice for all. Today, we join in gratitude for the sliver of light of recognition of these parts of the fight for freedom, which we shall never take for granted. And I invite you now to join with me in the spirit of meditation. Please find a comfortable position where you can breathe easily, slowly and deeply, knowing that our breaths are in sync with one another wherever we are. Our healing energy flows between us wherever we are. We often pray for serenity, to accept things we cannot change. Activist and scholar Angela Davis said, "I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept." It's not that this aspiration and this commitment are mutually exclusive, but what courage it takes to hold them both within ourselves at the same time. The courage to contain their power, the courage to release their power. May we have the courage to change the things we can and to change the things we cannot accept. Paciencia y fe, patience and faith. Through so many joys and sorrows, through growing wisdom, we join today in gratitude for a community in which to remember, a community in which to share our hopes. And so I invite you now to type into the Zoom chat box any milestones in your life that you would like for us to share as a community, joys, sorrows. Feel free to leave your eyes closed because I will go ahead and read the chat as it comes across, and so you can stay in meditation with one another. Remembering Ivy Merrill, who passed on May 25th. Seeing grandchildren in person, first time in 19 months. After graduating with my BA in psychology, I moved here to Whatcom County. Thoughts for all those without secure housing. border may open July 21st, exclamation point. Loving getting to know our new rescue cats, Desmond and Molly. And I'll add for myself the joy of hearing the birds chirping outside on I Street. And please join me in holding all the joys and sorrows still too tender to share. And let us hold one another closely, even as we come to understand all that we bear.
Hi, dear friends. My name is Ann Stevenson, and I'm a longtime member of BUF. I recently heard an interview with George Floyd's good friend, Reverend Ronnie Lillard, who knew Floyd through his Christian ministry and his rap music in Houston, Texas. I was touched to learn of Floyd's traumatic life, his humanity, and the gifts he left behind. Who is George Floyd? His great-great-grandfather had been a slave, and at the age of 2, his parents divorced, and his mom moved with her 5 children to Houston, Texas, where they lived in a housing project. He was skilled in sports and played basketball and football in high school, where he gained a football scholarship to college. He served time in prison for robbery. He was respected in his community for his work in mentoring young men. Reverend Lillard said that guys would listen to him, and he would advise them to avoid prison, to put down weapons, and that they were loved by him and by God. He had an ongoing drug problem. He was a rap artist who was noted in the New York Times. He delivered meals to seniors. He moved to Minneapolis to rebuild his life and to find work. He also did a 90-day drug treatment when he arrived. He was a flawed human being, and he had gifts, just like all of us. It was just over a year ago that George Floyd was murdered by police officer Derek Chauvin in that 9-minute agonizing chokehold. And since then, what has happened? What is Floyd's legacy? I think he has so much. I have to show you his picture. I don't know whether you can see this, but George Floyd's face has become the face of a movement, both in our country and around the world, a symbol of racial injustice and police brutality. That was one. His horrible death has ignited frustrations and spurred thousands of people to become activists and legislators. 3, cities and states are trying to reimagine policing, moving to a public safety model, and lots of laws have been enacted, and now there are over 1,500 police reform bills that are still pending in state legislatures. 4, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2021 was passed in the House and is now bogged down in the Senate. 5, business and corporations have committed to work on equitable hiring practices and more. 6, justice has begun to be served when 10 police officers testified against him, and he was Chauvin, and he was sentenced to life in prison. And also his family is carrying on his legacy. Today, we're thinking of George Floyd and the 900 police shootings, deaths since his murder in that 1 year. That's more than ever. Reverend Lillard said of his friend, "If George can be that message of hope, you can be that too." His life stands for something, for dignity and the ongoing march for equality. Thank you.
Freedom, oh, freedom, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Weeping, no more weeping. Weeping over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Singing, there'll be singing, singing over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Thank you so much, Ellie and Ann. Today we're going to share a video of a sermon by Reverend Marlon Lavenhar, who is the UU minister in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's what he shared with the congregation in honor of the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre.
The storms of life are raging. Stand by me. When the storms of life are raging, stand by me. When the world is tossing me like a ship upon the sea, thou who rulest wind and water, stand by me. In the midst of tribulation, stand by me. In the midst of tribulation, stand by me. when the host of hell assail and my strength begins to fail. Thou who never lost the battle, stand by me. In the midst of faults and failures, stand by me. In the midst of faults and failures, stand by me. Oh, when I do the best I can, and my friends misunderstand, thou who knowest all about me, stand by me. In the midst of persecution, stand by me. Oh yes, yes. In the midst of persecution, stand by me. When my foes in battle array undertake to stop my way, thou who saved Paul and Silas, oh thou lily of the valley, thou who rulest wind and water, stand by me. Yeah.
We all need somebody to stand by us at different points in our lives. Some of you have stood by me. I know I've stood by you. Right now, as we commemorate 100 years of the 1921 race massacre, I hope we will all stand by the survivors and the descendants in the community of Greenwood. I've been trying my best to stand by the community and the survivors for 21 years now, since coming to Tulsa and hearing about what happened and seeing the official report of the Race Riot Commission that our state put together, and seeing that all those diverse people called for reparations for the survivors and the descendants as absolutely important to rectify and remedy the situation. So I've been out there trying to do my best to stand with them. And just this month, I've had a really unique opportunity through a collaboration with Nehemiah Frank and the Black Wall Street Times, the digital media company that recognizes that access to information is the new human right. And so I've been collaborating, using some of my cartooning. One of my hobbies is doing these cartoons, and I've been doing a series on the race massacre with a column, so a cartoon with a column that describes some of the backstory and some of the history, which has been really, I've been taken by the response, the comments, the shares, people sharing them all over the country and talking about these things. And it's a way that through an image and a short few paragraphs to be able to transmit what happened and hopefully help people understand why reparations makes a lot of sense and is the right thing to do. So I want to share maybe 16 or 15 of the cartoons with you this morning, and just walk you through the basic story and the meaning behind each one. And I hope that's an engaging way for you to understand. So what happened, of course, there was an incident in an elevator between two youth, one African-American male and a white woman. It was a busy time. It was Memorial Day. There were people all over the city. It seems absolutely crazy that any person would try to attack somebody in such a public place with so many people all around. So truly, it's been understood that this was just a sensationalized story that was told that this black male tried to assault. They use the word assault in the front page newspaper article in the Tulsa Tribune, the evening paper. So people are coming out of work on May 31st or coming out whatever they were doing in the evening, and this article came out. And I want to show you the first cartoon. It shows a white newspaper boy hawking newspapers in downtown Tulsa saying, "Nab a Negro, nab a Negro, nab a Negro, read all about it." And it was telling this sensationalized, inaccurate story about this black male trying to rape, because the word assault meant rape back then, a white woman on an elevator. It was crazy. It created fear. It created hysteria among the white community and fear among the black community. In fact, the next cartoon in the series is of a young the sort of black counterpart to this young white male, bringing a newspaper home, front page article showing people coming back to Greenwood from work, maybe shining shoes or whatever he was doing in downtown Tulsa, to say, "Look, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to Dick Rowland, the young man? Is he going to be lynched?" As we saw happening all across the country in that era, is there going to be a race, what they used to call race riot, which was actually an act of mob violence and terrorism by white people against black communities? We saw Red Summer just 18 months earlier. You saw in 36 towns and cities across America, both north and south, where you saw mass killings of black people by white mobs. This was happening across the country, and to have this in the newspaper, folks knew on all sides of town something was going to happen, and there was a lot of fear and anger, and all of that was happening. So I want to just show you the third cartoon in that series, which is a pencil saying fake news and bringing a flame in and lighting the spark that burned down Greenwood, this incredible black community known as Black Wall Street. It was an incredible economy. They had movie theaters and doctor's offices, law offices, drug stores, candy stores, everything you could imagine, and homes. And so this article, this lie in the paper, sensationalized to sell papers, was the spark that brought this together. So you had a mob of white people forming outside the jail, because they did nab the Negro, Dick Rowland. He was taken and brought in for questioning at the police station. And so a white mob formed. There was talk of a lynching, fear of a lynching. You had then black World War I veterans who put on their uniforms and their government issue rifles, and they came in lockstep to the jail and the courthouse and said to the chief of police, "We will stand with you to make sure Dick Rowland is not lynched, that he has his day in court if he's going to be arrested, and we just want to make sure that he's safe." And they came very orderly, but one from the white mob tried to grab a rifle away from one of the black veterans. There was a tug back and forth. A gun went off. No one knows the first shot where it came from, but all of a sudden, all hell broke loose in Tulsa. The chief of police started to deputize over 200 white people from this mob of vigilantes, giving weapons and telling them to help, and they were going to go and try to clean up Greenwood, or however they understood that. So the next cartoon is a picture when you see these white men with their weapons making their way across town. One of them saying, "Wait, isn't this illegal?" And another one says, no, we're deputized. And I wanted this cartoon, and the commentary that goes with it explains this wasn't some random mob of hateful racists that just formed out of nowhere and just did this. These were folks with real government authority behind them. They were deputized, sworn in by the city employee, the chief of police. And so this was an organized effort that had the backing of the official authority of the state. And so that's why the issue of reparations around the city's responsibility and the state's responsibility to repair the damage that those in their service created. That's one of the important arguments. The next cartoon shows a burning church. Now, this and the cartoon of the pencil, the fake news pencil, these were drawn on top of historic postcards from 1921. After the massacre, photographs of the destruction of Greenwood were turned into postcards and sent by white people all over the country, either to brag about what happened or just to show people what happened. And so I took some of these postcards, which told a particular story in 1921, and I drew over the top of them to tell a counter narrative, a news story, if you will. In this one, you see Mount Zion Church burning, and it says, how white Christians justified burning down of black churches. Because how is it that these white folks, supposedly Christians, who can burn down a fellow church in the community? Well, they did it. You could see at the bottom. This was the original text from the postcard. It said, burning of a church where a munition was stored during the race riot in 1921. Well, let me tell you, there were no munitions stored in any churches. There's no evidence of that. That was a story that white people told to justify the burning down of all of these churches. In the cartoon, I put in there the real reason and to give some multiple choice: fear, hatred, the devil, all of the above. The next cartoon is another one that is drawn right on top of one of these historic photograph postcards. And it shows they marched, these vigilantes, these deputies, marched over almost 10,000 black people out of their home, got them out of their homes, marched them through the streets to 3 different detention centers, concentration camps, if you will, and with their hands up through the street. So in this cartoon, I show you see a man with a child, because we don't think about the children and the impact and the trauma on these children, who were many in Greenwood at the time. He's saying, one man's saying, tell me again why you fought for America. He's talking to a World War I veteran being marched through the streets. And he said, of course, freedom from tyranny. I thought, they went overseas to fight to end tyranny for freedom for America, but then in America, they weren't even free. And then they're being marched through the streets at gunpoint in their own hometown with their hands up, taken away from their property. And so the next cartoon talks about the looting of Greenwood. The homes were looted. They stole silverware, jewelry, clothes, furniture, cars. This stuff was all looted and taken out by the mob. So folks lost all that. Other people gained from that loss. White people who stole these things, some of them deputized by the state. So in this cartoon, it says the looting of Greenwood, and it shows these kids saying to their mom, where'd you get all that nice new jewelry? And, of course, the father with his guns, the vigilante character, saying, don't ask, right? Don't ask where she got that jewelry. In the next one, another one painted on top of a historic photograph, it shows the scene of just some of the mass destruction. 35 full city blocks, more than that, destroyed completely. And this young boy, again, wanting to bring the children in, wanting to humanize the story. So, he's saying, Mama, why do they hate us? How the children had to make sense of this. The parents had to explain to their children, what do they say about white people? How did they try to explain how something like this could happen? I still wonder what could be said. And how the impacts of all of this continues to play out in our time. In the next cartoon, I show the green cards, the police protection card. It says, I survived a race massacre, and all I got was this lousy card. You know, the only thing the city of Tulsa has ever given to those who survived this incredible crime against humanity that happened in this city was a little green piece of paper. If they were taken to one of the 3 detention centers, then in order to get out, a white person had to vouch for them and say, oh, they work for me, I know them, they are so-and-so. And if you had a white person come and vouch for you, then they would sign this card. You would have it said police protection, and black people were walking around Tulsa with these cards pinned to their shirts for days, and it showed the white community this was a good Negro. They've been vouched for by a white person that they're a good Negro. They didn't cause any of this stuff. You can trust them and protect them. But if you were black and you were walking around Tulsa without one of those green cards taped to your lapel, you were in danger of being attacked, arrested, or otherwise getting into trouble. It was, you can imagine what an awful time. Also, the fact that they were able to create 3 detention centers, move 10,000 people to those detention centers, and create 7,500 cards with an official, signing in and out, all that stuff was able to happen in this short span of hours that the massacre happened. It does make one wonder what kind of pre-planning had already been done. It just doesn't seem like something that just exploded overnight in a 12 to 16-hour period of time. How does all that happen? How does all that coordination happen? That's why there's a lot of talk about this being more than just a random act of mob violence. The next cartoon deals with the issues of Christianity and spirituality that we don't talk about enough in this city. And that is, it shows the white church on one side of the railroad tracks and a black church on the other side of the railroad tracks the Sunday after the massacre. 4 days, the embers still burning from the massacre, and you have white preachers. And we have the texts of these sermons from major churches in downtown Tulsa, white churches, saying the most, what we would absolutely say are the racist terms about the black community, about Greenwood, justifying the killing and the destruction and justifying the actions of white people in the community, blaming the black community, even blaming white people who treated black people as equals during that time for giving black people the idea that maybe they're equal, which then sparked them to try to, say, protect Dick Rowland or what have you. So in this cartoon, the white preacher is saying, the Negroes rioted because some foolish whites treated them like equals and give them these ideas. This is quoted from an actual sermon, and we know this didn't come from God. We know this didn't come from the Holy Spirit, so I have the devil whispering those words into the preacher's ears. I think we have to have a reckoning with the fact that Christian pastors in major pulpits around this city were preaching evil in the name of Jesus and in the name of God on the Sunday following this massacre, and I don't know for how much longer, but we know the Christian church has to have a reckoning. The white Christian church is still with race, its involvement with slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, and other things. Of course, the black preachers on the other side of the tracks trying to comfort traumatized people, survivors who have been through so much, lost lives, property, everything, homeless, all the rest of it. And of course, saying the words from the Bible, Jesus whispering in his ear, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." The incredible forgiveness that we've seen coming out of the black church and the black community time and time again through incredible atrocity and violence and terrorism of that community has been astonishing. And I think it was Cornel West who said every white person, every time a black person walks by white folks, they should stand up and give them a standing ovation for the fact that we've never had an intifada in this community, in this country, that black people have never risen up to try to fight back through violence and guerrilla warfare or anything else, but have always continued to maintain dignity and through the church and through taking the higher ground. And it's time for us all to respond in a way that brings the community together. The next cartoon is about the insurance companies, which gave nothing. Folks had been paying their premiums for years. They lost their homes, their businesses, and everything, and they said, sorry. In the cartoon, he says, you people caused this riot, so your policy is void. Of course, Black man saying, who people caused this riot? What? But they blamed it on the black community, the city leaders, the media and others, and the clergy and others, even in the courts. And so insurance companies took the money and ran, right? They've continued to build wealth on the wealth that they had not paid back to those who deserved it by blaming them for the destruction of their own community. That's something that hasn't been rectified, and another issue as it comes to reparations. And you can imagine that, can you imagine a black male in this situation, in this cartoon, actually yelling out in anger in that situation? Because a black person could not yell out in anger and express themselves fully in front of a white person in that time in America without, again, more violence or terror happening against that person. It just, the layers of this are deep, and we need to just be honest about them and talk about them. The next cartoon shows a police lineup. It's called Tulsa Massacre Cold Case 1921 to 2021. For 100 years, the police have been sitting on a cold case of mass murder in the streets of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and nobody has been arrested or held accountable. You can see, so that's why they're just outlines of people, not the actual people. And he's saying, strange thing, in 100 years, we haven't been able to find anyone who fits these descriptions. And you have the vigilante character, you have a police officer, you have someone in a KKK hood, you have clergy, you have pilots, because planes were involved in this massacre and destruction of Greenwood, and you have judges with their gavels. It took a bunch of systems and communities working together to cover this up and to hold nobody accountable for such mass violence. The next cartoon is about the school system. It says, what public schools taught about the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre for 90 of the past 100 years? And it's a blank sheet of paper. People were not taught. The school system hid it. It wasn't in the textbooks. People learned history of Oklahoma, did not learn anything about this. When I posted this, the comments, hundreds and hundreds of comments of people of all generations who grew up in Tulsa and Oklahoma talking about, I never learned it, I didn't know it, this is when I first learned it. It was incredible. People, it still boggles my mind that so in order to blame the victims of a massacre for the massacre, and then to cover it up and hold nobody accountable, and then to create a conspiracy of silence where nobody talked about it, you had to have the media, you had to have the school system, you had to have the courts, you had to have the politicians, you had to have a lot of systems conspiring to create that kind of a conspiracy of silence, cover up, and those are the things that we need to still reckon with, the systemic level of this. Again, this wasn't just a bunch of angry white people who went in and did this and shocked everybody else. There were a lot of folks involved before, during, and for a long time afterward. The next cartoon shows the 4 different points at which this destruction of Greenwood happened. 1921, the massacre, of course. 1971, when urban renewal came in. A lot of people don't know that Black Wall Street was rebuilt. It was rebuilt. It was stronger than ever before. Following that, going into the 30s and 40s and 50s, and it wasn't until 1971 that the city decided through urban renewal to put highways right through the center of the Greenwood business district, and they bought up a bunch of homes and businesses. They destroyed the district once and for all because you put a permanent obstruction to the recreation of Greenwood, and that did away with Greenwood. The last straw was in 1991 when the University Center at Tulsa was created, and we put in universities there, and again bought up homes and businesses, and now all the land, almost all of the block, the 35 square blocks, are now owned by the city and by the university system. So the idea of rebuilding Greenwood at this point is almost impossible, but the other thing was there are vacant lots. You'll see them all throughout. So a lot of this land is not even being used. The city owns them. The university system owns some, but this is an opportunity to give back some of that land potentially. That's one of the moves to help recreate some businesses in the Greenwood district. That's something I hope we're going to be talking about. And of course, in 2021, you have the city owns, or the university system owns, or other, now the the properties that are being developed are all owned, as I understand it, by white people. There was an article in the Atlantic that talks about this, and the Washington Post, that there might be some black stores in some of these places, but they're all owned by white owners who are making the money off of these properties. So the takeover of Greenwood 100 years later has been completed in many ways, unless we do something significant as a city to redress the situation. The last two, in this second to last cartoon, I show the Tower of Reconciliation, which is a beautiful 3-story monument in brass in Tulsa to recognize the massacre. And it starts with the Trail of Tears at the bottom, and then it moves up to slavery and emancipation, and eventually Greenwood and the massacre. And it's the idea is that it goes all the way up to reconciliation and liberation at the top. And so where are we in this process? And it shows in the cartoon that where white people think we are, reconciliation, the stage many white people think Tulsa is in now, and a woman's waving a sign, yay, us, and we see a lot of this now around the centennial. Aren't we great? We're reconciling, we're in a great place as a city. And then the other arrow shows truth and repair, the stage that most everyone else is still waiting for Tulsa to get to. We're just starting to tell the story. There's still a lot of truth-telling to be told, and the repair work, the reparations, the development, the reckoning with what happened, even apologies that still haven't happened yet. And so the final cartoon in this series this morning is the cartoon that I call the Justice League. And these are black leaders. These are just a sample of black leaders who've come forward. We're so fortunate in this city to have amazing black leadership, both in publishing. You have Nehemiah Frank from the Black Wall Street Times doing amazing work. You got Greg Robinson in the Green, who is a community activist, works for Met Cares, doing amazing work. Tiffany Crutcher, whose brother, Terrence Crutcher, was killed. Dr. Tiffany Crutcher is continuing the work of the Tulsa community, the Terrence Crutcher Foundation, and is somebody who is an organizer and doing amazing things in this community. Next to her, like Superman coming in, is Dr. Robert Turner of Vernon AME Church, a great friend and colleague who has really been the captain of the effort for reparations from the religious community of Tulsa, and I'm so honored to stand by his side. Of course, we have Vanessa Hall Harper to District 1, our city councilor, who has been a staunch advocate. And then we have Demario Solomon Simmons in the Black Panther outfit, and he is the lawyer who's working with the survivors and descendants to try to get reparations in the courts. So from all these different fields, we've got amazing, brilliant, talented black leaders. There's others I could have in here. Reverend Gerald Davis could be in here. Regina Goodwin up at the state legislature could be in here, and many others. But this is my close team of friends and colleagues doing the justice work, and I'm honored to be a part of it, and I hope you'll be a part of it, and I hope we as a city will do the right thing, maybe become a model for other cities around the country and around the world for how do you take what's happened in the past, and when you really have the opportunity to do the right thing to redress it and to sew the fabric of the community back together and to move forward together as one Tulsa and one city. I'm glad All Souls is a part of it, and I hope you will continue to support me and support this effort. 100 years later, amen. Thank you for joining us. For 100 years, All Souls in Tulsa has been a beacon of this free faith. We offer our services and programs freely online for all those who are interested. You can help us to do this by making a one-time gift today or a reoccurring pledge. We really appreciate you joining us and being a part of helping us make All Souls in Tulsa what it is. Thank you.
I was born by the river in a little town, and oh, just like that river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming. But I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. See, I go to the movies and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me, boy, don't you hang around. It's been a long, oh, long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Now you see, I go to my brother. I say, brother, can you help me, please? But he winds up, oh, he winds up knocking me right back on my knees. Oh, there's been times when I thought I couldn't last for long, but now, I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long, 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 long time coming. Oh, I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Said it's been a long, oh, a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come.
I'm so grateful to be a part of a larger Unitarian Universalist association where we provide mutual support and programming and inspiration and just care for one another that I've received from my colleagues, and hope that in a couple of weeks we're going to be joining together with the whole country of Unitarian Universalist congregations at General Assembly, so you too will have opportunities to join with people throughout our movement, throughout the country. And some of that General Assembly programming is limited to registrants, but there are a number of things that you can go online at uua.org and participate in some of the lectures and workshops and worship services. So I encourage you to do that. I'll put some more information about that in the midweek update. So I encourage support for the UUA, our Association of Congregations, for the Tulsa Church, for all the great justice work that they do and the courage that they have to stand up in public and say these changes got to happen. They still need to happen. And I also encourage you, and I'm so grateful to you for giving generously to the Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship. And while Andrea plays our offertory music, there will be a slide up that shows the different ways that you can express your financial generosity. And of course, there are so many other ways that you all have of contributing to fulfill our mission to ensure that we are a beloved community, both within and beyond these walls, much more than just your financial support, but it's all really important. So I thank you. Thanks, Andrea. And as we extinguish the chalice, I'm going to invite all of the people who have joined us today in the sanctuary to come up and circle around with me. Paciencia y fe, patience and faith, wisdom and courage, memory and hope. Amen, and blessed be. And let's circle around for freedom. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Wow. I'm so glad you could be here. That's the first time we've ever tried that. Mark set it up at the last minute, and thank you to Al and Mark and Andrew who have been figuring so much out about bringing this together. Yeah, Al as well. Yep. Oh, it's so great to see you all. And that is Stephanie and Rupert, who have never been to BUF before. So let's welcome them.
Anyone still remaining? Can I help you with anything?
Hi, Walt.
Hi, Jane. So, breakout rooms are open right now for coffee hour.
Right. I was shifted to one, but there was nobody else there.
Oh, okay. Give me one sec then. I'll switch you to a different one.
I mean, there were people there